Hello, my name is Saloon, and in this video I want to talk about the rules of transmogging. This is mainly aimed at new or returning players, as there have been a lot of changes since the inception of the transmog system, and many of these happened in recent years. There is quite a lot to cover, so I'm going to break this into three major sections that are collection, transmogging, exceptions. Transmogging has two subsections that are armor and weapons, and exceptions will also have two subsections that are artifact weapons and cosmetics. All the main and subsections will be time-stamped, so if you want to skip or rewatch anything, that should help. Without further ado, let's begin. Let's start first with what can you collect? You can start collecting as soon as level 1, and you can collect any quality item as long as it's in your level range. So this means poor, common, uncommon, rare, epic, legendary, heirloom, artifact weapon. For a long time it was not possible to collect grey or white items, but in recent years they made it possible. Now, thanks to the warband, you can also collect the appearance of an item even if your class can't use it, but that will make the item warbound, which means you can't sell it to others, but you can use them with your own characters on your account. When you finish a quest and it offers you a choice out of multiple rewards, you will earn the appearance of all available choices. Currently, Blizzard is also working on making it possible to collect every appearance from quest rewards, even if they aren't appropriate for your current class. Depending on when are you watching this video, that might be a possibility already. You might have noticed that after equipping an item, it gets added to your collection, but did you know you can also add things by just selling them to the vendor? You can even add something to your collection by disenchanting it. Now I'll tell you what you cannot collect. At the moment, you can't collect tier sets of another class. However, once again, Blizzard is working on making this possible, so if you're out there getting tier set pieces that are not for your class, do not throw them away, because if you put them in your bank, once they release the patch that will allow you to collect them, they will be automatically added as long as they are in your bank or inventory. Regular bank, by the way, not warband bank. They said this would come early in the War Within, so stay tuned for this patch. Now I'm going to move on to what else can you not collect. Unfortunately, you cannot collect profession equipments as an appearance. It's a bit of a shame, because some of them look nice and it's nice to have some representation, but there are also people who don't like to look at their profession equipment, even when they are crafting. So if you're wondering, I'm going to tell you where to disable it. In Dornegal, talk to this NPC, Mara Treebender. Tell her which profession equipment you don't want to see, and that's it. She can be found here. If you loot an item in a raid or dungeon for the first time, it will be added to your collection. But if you decide to trade your item away because you don't need it, you will lose that appearance. I want to briefly talk about the artifact weapon skin collection. All of these have different methods to unlock. Some might drop from certain enemies. For some, you might have to collect certain things. I will link a guide from Wowhead in the description on how to collect more artifact weapon skins, but it might be out of date. That concludes our collection section. Next we move on to transmogging. I'm going to talk about transmogging armor first. You can only transmog your class's armor type. So you can't mix plate with cloth, for example. If you're a plate user, you can only transmog plate on yourself. There is an exception for cosmetics, but we will get to that later. Did you know that you can hide every armor item? That's right, you can transmog all your items to be hidden, so if you wish, you can play almost naked. In a recent update, they allowed us to hide legs as well, which was the last slot that couldn't be hidden before. Hiding certain slots can allow your character customization to shine. For example, if you hide your chest on a Demon Hunter transmog, you can show off your cool tattoos alongside your set. You can also now transmog shoulders separately by ticking the box, and you can select each shoulder pad separately from each other. Now we move on to weapons. You can only transmog weapons that your class can use. You can find your weapon skills in your spellbook under the General tab. You can transmog one-hand weapons for other one-hand weapons, and you can transmog two-hand weapons for other two-hand weapons. Daggers are an exception. Daggers can only be transmogged for daggers or Legion artifact weapons. Fist weapons and wands used to have the same restriction, but those have been removed in recent years, so I hope maybe dagger restrictions will be also lifted in the future. Before I move on to bigger exceptions, I want to mention that there are armor sets and weapons that are faction or race restricted or change appearance based on the faction. So, for example, the Crew Gladiator set from Legion will show up as a blue set on Alliance characters, and it will show up as red on Horde characters. Heritage armor are bound to races. At last, we get to exceptions. I decided to call this section Exceptions because both artifact weapons and cosmetics ban the rules we discussed above, as they are always exceptions to those rules. I will explain artifact weapon in two parts because this can be a bit confusing. Part 1 is your current spec artifact weapon. We will take Monk as an example. Your Mistweaver artifact weapon is a staff. You will find these in the drop-down menu, Legion Artifacts. You can transmog Legion Artifacts onto any weapon your specialization can use. So here we have a one-hand sword with an offhand. I will transmog the Mistweaver artifact weapon, which is a staff, onto my one-hand sword. As long as it remains transmogged like this, it will appear and act as a staff, which means if you have a transmog on your offhand applied as well, that won't appear at all because you're appearing to wear a staff. If you switch specialization like this, the transmog will just simply disappear, but if you switch back, it will reappear. Part 2 is off-spec artifact weapons. You can use the appearances of your class's other specs, however, they act differently. We will use the Monk again as an example. Our main spec is Mistweaver. The Windwalker artifact weapon is a fist weapon. This means it counts as a one-hand weapon. It will show up in the fist weapon tab. You can only transmog it onto other one-hand weapons. So in our example, I can't transmog my staff into the Windwalker fist weapon because it's not a one-hand weapon. To summarize it all, anything you find under the Legion artifact drop-down you can transmog onto anything, as this will only show on your current spec. If you want to use off-spec artifact weapon appearances, you will have to search for them in their corresponding weapon type. Cosmetics are a unique type of transmog as they ignore almost all rules except for weapons. So for example, Gossamer's Emerald Gown is a trading post cosmetic. It can be used regardless of faction, race or armor type. You can transmog this onto plate, leather or mail, despite it looking cloth because it's a cosmetic item. As I mentioned, the only exception here is weapons, and the cosmetic will specify that it's a two-hand axe, for example, so it will show up in the two-hand axe tab. And that is it for the rules of transmogging. Thank you very much for watching. Please give this video a like and consider subscribing if you found this video useful. I wish you all happy transmogging. Bye bye.